Hello, welcome to yesterday's Airlines. Phoenix January 2023 releases are upon us, and they will be the subject of this video. Phoenix had a decent enough 2022, I guess, within the limited criteria I set for Phoenix. There were some good models, there were some really bad models, and there was a lot of ordinary models. Phoenix didn't surprise that much, but then again, they did produce some interesting models like the Afghanistani CAM A340 and a selection of other decent A340s. They were probably the highlight, but there was a reasonable selection of A330s, 747s, and some 767s using some of their better molds. There was still a large selection of molds that should be replaced in use, like the 787, the A320, almost all their 737s, A350, so on and so forth. You get the picture. This month in January, we've got 15 new Phoenix announcements, and on the surface of it, they look very much like the sort of thing Phoenix produces most months. Not a large number of surprises here, but nonetheless, as always, still worth investigating, and no doubt there will be some models in here which are very much worth acquiring. Okie doke. You know what I'm going to say now. Subscribe to the video, or subscribe to the channel even. Check me out on Instagram at Yesterday Airlines. And, hey, check out 400 Scale in Detail, the Facebook group as well, because there is a lot of good conversation on there from a wide range of collectors. And always check out yesterdaysairlines.com for the latest mold reviews, av history blogs, spotlights on my collection, discussion about releases from smaller manufacturers, and all that kind of good stuff that you're used to from yesterday's Airlines. But for now, let's get on without further ado and have a look at what Phoenix are sending our way towards the end of January. So 15 models this month, and not a huge number of surprises, but still some decent models. It is interesting to see that quite a few of the models in this release set are ones that they've released before, or at least are similar to ones they've released before. And we start out in that vein with a trio of A320s. The first up is in the colours of Swiss International Airlines, and it is registered HBJDC. It's an A320 Neo with the sharklets, and the thing that makes this model slightly different is that it has this red nose. I'm not really sure what that is for, but it kind of fits with the rest of the colour scheme, albeit it makes the aircraft look a little goofy, I guess. Now, I'm sure I've talked about the Phoenix A320 mold previously. It isn't bad. It isn't good. It's very much in the middle. It's a sort of mold which I'm happy to buy when there are no alternatives, but if there is an alternative that's not the jcwings mold, then I'm likely to go for that alternative. Certainly, it's inferior to the Aero Classics mold, it's inferior to the Panda mold, it's inferior to the NG mold, it's inferior to the upcoming Aviation 400 mold, but it's not awful. And the Neos at least have decent ground clearance. Unlike the JC version, the engines aren't too bad. So, given all of that, I don't hate the mold, it's fine. This release, it's not that exciting. And the main reason I say that is there actually have been a surprising number of Swiss A320s in this scale. There have in fact been 13, now, including this release. Now, if we take out all the ones that have wingtip fences and don't have sharklets, i.e., the ones that aren't Neos, then this is the fourth. So even then, there have still been a reasonable number, and they've come from a range of manufacturers, including, you guessed it, Phoenix, who have made a standard colours Swiss A320 Neo previously in 2013. So that was a long time ago, admittedly, and this one is a little bit different. Having said that, there is also an effort from jcwings, which is made a couple of years ago, which is suitably awful. It's got some really bad cockpit printing and gigantic engines. But more importantly, there is a much more recent model, also from 2020, by Panda Models, which really knocks out the other two. And we'll knock out this one as well. If you were looking for a Swiss A320, then I would recommend that version as being the best of the 3 that have been released so far. Do you really need one with a red nose cone? Hey, maybe you collect Swiss, maybe you do, I don't know. But it's not that exciting. It's very, very similar. It's just the nose cone colour, which is different. And for that reason, I'm going to make it a workhorse. It's very much, okay. You know, it's not an exciting start, but it's a core model for a European major, I guess. And I'm sure it'll make some people happy, but it's not really floating my boat too much. And the same really is the case with the next model, which is another A320. This one is not a Neo. This one, however, does have sharklets, but it's not a Neo. It's an A320-232, so it's got the IAE engines, and it's in the colours of Thai Smile. The reg is HS TXT, and this will be the 6th Thai Smile A320 that Phoenix have made. All of them except for one has been in the same scheme, and they just love producing Thai Smile A320s. So there must be some demand for them. The last one was made in 2020, HSTXS. They made HSTXE the year before. They made HSTXC. That one didn't have sharklets, admittedly, and that was in 2019 as well. And then there have been a couple of others prior to that too. You'd have thought that everyone who wanted one of these would already have one. And all the things I've said about the A320 mold, are the same. It's fine, nothing special. So again, very much workhorse, not interesting, not exciting at all. The last A320 of this batch is in the colours of Lufthansa. It's a DAINY, and it's in this Lufthansa scheme, which I think I saw this aircraft actually at Frankfurt recently. And here it looks quite nice, this colour scheme and the new titles. That's really the big difference, the titles. So it says Lufthansa rather than Lufthansa. And yeah, it looks okay. It's a Neo, it's got the bandit mask on it, looks pretty good. There have been a selection of A320 Neos made. One was made by Gemini, another was been made by JC. Yeah, again, because they're Neos and they're on that mould, they are, not great because the engines are just so big. There actually haven't been that many others, certainly not wearing the new scheme. There have been a couple of CEOs from Panda and Aero Classics. So this actually is surprisingly unusual in the sense that no one else has made it yet, and no one's really made that many good A320 Neos in the Lufthansa scheme. So those things make it a bit more interesting. And yeah, I'd have to say that this one deserves high flyer in my opinion. I think this one will be decent. I'm not sure if I'd buy it if I was a Lufthansa collector. Would I wait to see if somebody else made it? Maybe I would. But it is unique. The mould doesn't offend me, and yeah, that's good enough, I think, to slot it up there in the high flyer. Okay, there's one more Airbus A320 family member, and that one is an A321 Neo, and that is in the colours of Korean Air. The reg is HL8505. It's the same aircraft that jcwings have announced recently. So you've got a choice of either the mega engine jcwings mould, if they ever get their release out, or the TO204-esque Phoenix A321 mould with the incorrect wing. So neither of these are particularly great choices. And I'm not really interested in Korean Air, to be honest, and in short-haul aircraft either. But yeah, it's going to be out way before the JC, and it will be better than that. Again, will somebody else make it? Quite possibly. This is a model that I could put in the gas guzzler. I think I'll just put it in the workhorse. It's just too boring for me even to talk about much more. It's not interesting, even though it is quite a new aircraft, and yeah, it's just not doing it for me. Workhorse, and that's generous. Could easily put this in gas guzzler, I feel. So we've got 3 more Airbuses in the list, and they are all wide bodies, and the next one is again Lufthansa. It's the second of 3 Lufthansa models this month. It's an insane the amount of Lufthansa that gets made. Obviously, there's big demand for the German flag carrier, far bigger than for, say, like Air France. It's just a huge number of Lufthansa models that get made. This aircraft is an A330-300 DAI-KQ. I talked about this in the last NG video. I think it was the last NG video anyway, because it's been announced by NG. It's in the Lufthansa Diversity Wins special scheme. The scheme's quite nice. I actually think I gave it a decent score last time around Lufthansa, and it's not, upsetting me here either. But at the same time, would I buy this over the NG version? Probably not. I actually really do quite like the Phoenix A330, so it's not a big issue. And the gap between them is probably quite small, but you've got to say that if it comes between Phoenix and NG for pretty much anything, then you should be probably choosing NG. Their quality as an overall package is just better than Phoenix, and I think the NG A330 is probably slightly better. Though like I say, I do like the Phoenix one. So actually, even though I'm kind of talking this down, again, I'd say that this is probably a high flyer release. It's not a bad model at all, but it is going to be made by NG, and their release probably should be out slightly earlier, though it may be delayed by the Chinese New Year. So, yeah, I'll put it into high flyer. But much like the A320, probably not a model I'd get still, and I'd probably choose another. So, yeah, I could put it in workhorse, but I'm going to leave it in high flyer, I think. Next up is something which is unique, though I'm sure it won't be unique for very long. It is a Virgin Atlantic A330-900. That's the Neo. It's their GVTOM is the reg. This is an inevitable release, and I highly expect Gemini to be releasing a version of this soon as well, but they haven't yet, so I can't let that get in the way of the scoring for this model. You've got to say that the Phoenix A330 Neo mold is a little bit lazy. I think I've talked about this before. I've certainly talked about it at the website where I've done a detailed review. The wing lits are very poorly designed. They don't look that good. And other aspects of the mold aren't spectacular either. The nose gear door's too big. Still got this rather clunky half wing join line to the fuselage. So it's got characteristics of their old A330 CEO mold, which I do like, but you'd like to think that they'd have tried to re-engineer and make the Neo mold better, not just the CEO with new wings slapped on it, which is basically what they've done. So, yeah, I personally prefer the JC mold. There's obviously the AV400 one coming at some point, and they no doubt will end up releasing the Virgin colours as well. Comes down to colours to a degree. Phoenix's Virgin colours are very grey. But if you've already got their 7879 or their A340-300 or their A340-600 releases, then you probably would get this to go with them. But I wouldn't necessarily. So again, this is just like the other two models. Yeah, it's not going to be bad, but it's worth high flyer, I think. But you could argue, if you were being harsh, that it could easily be workhorse. The mold is not the best. They could have done more with that if they were trying. So I'll put it into high flyer, but just like the two Lufthansas that I've got in high flyer, it's on the edge of just being workhorse, I think. I feel like in these videos I'm almost being too nice to Phoenix, and I'm not criticising them enough for some of the sloppy mould work that they're doing, because if I had the choice, I probably wouldn't be getting any of these models so far if another manufacturer was offering them. As it happens, literally none of them are anywhere near my collecting criteria anyway, so it's not something I have to think about very often. Phoenix just released the same old stuff. Very rarely do they fit into my collection criteria, and the next model illustrates that well. It's the last Airbus of the set. It's an Iberia A350-900 EC-NXD. This is again the sort of, constantly just producing the same old stuff release that Phoenix annoy me with. Not just Phoenix, but they're quite a prime candidate. The Phoenix A350, as we've probably talked about tens of times because they release a lot of A350s, has been improved, isn't shocking, but is definitely inferior to everyone else's. So it probably is the worst of the A350s that are around. It's certainly a lot inferior to the NG and the AV400 mould. NG released an Iberia A350 not very long ago, a couple of years, so it's been a little while, but Phoenix have also released one previously too, so it's not like this is a unique model. This is effectively a repeat of a model they made in 2018, 4 years ago. It probably might look a little bit better than the one from 4 years ago because I know they've modified the mold slightly in terms of the undercarriage and such, but this is, or it will be, the fifth Iberia A350 in the scale. The livery sucks already anyway, so I know people out there missed out on it and want to collect an Iberia A350, but should have got the NG one, basically. And I'm not sure about this one. It's just, yeah, crap scheme, ordinary mold, made 4 times before. Workhorse, isn't it? It's workhorse. So that rounds up the Airbus side of the releases this month. We've got 3 sitting up there in the high flyer, and we've got the rest sitting down in workhorse. And to be fair, I probably should have put that Korean A321 in gas guzzler. There's nothing in this side of the drawer which is very exciting or isn't likely to be made by someone else on a better mold. And I feel that is probably the biggest issue with Phoenix at the moment, assuming they actually stay in the scale. It's just that they release the same stuff. Everyone else is going to make it. And everyone else will make it better because Phoenix have got weak printing in comparison to NG and Gemini and JC, and they've got an AV400, and they've got weak molds for their A320 series, their A350 series, and even their A330s are now looking a little long in the tooth, even though they're still decent. So on to the Boeings. Are they more exciting? Yes and no. Certainly it doesn't start off well, let's be honest. The first model up is a Gol 737-800 PRGXB. It's wearing the scheme related to the World Cup, so it's the Gol do Brazil scheme. It's a nice livery. Phoenix are the last of 3 manufacturers to announce this. jcwings have announced it, but of course, who knows when it'll be available, and their 77s were rubbish anyway. NG have announced it and released it, and frankly, the model looks really good. And now we've got Phoenix. Why are they bothering? What idiot thinks that the Phoenix 737 mold is in any way competitive with the NG version? I just don't know. It must just be, I mean, I hear basically that Phoenix are struggling a little bit, but I think that that's only in the West. And in China, there are still lots of people who basically don't seem to have a clue what they're doing or don't care what they're buying, buy any old rubbish like this. And this will be any old rubbish. Let's be honest. The mold, I've talked about this before, and the mold is old and misshapen. The nose is bad, the undercarriage isn't great, engines are rubbish, the wings aren't great. I mean, it's just across the board, it's a poor 737, and certainly the mold is very out of date. And the printing on their 737s is appalling because they don't know where the cockpit is. So, is this going to turn out well? No, it's not. It's going to be rubbish. It's going to be rubbish. And it's certainly going to be worse than the NG version. It'll almost certainly be worse than the jcwings version, which we'll get here in about 2025. You know, this is the sort of release which I just look at and go, Phoenix, you don't know what you're doing. Stop it. And I'm kind of completely lost patience with them on these 737s as well. I don't even need to see how bad this is going to look. This one's just going to go straight into scrap metal. I think I'm just going to start doing that with the 737-800s. They're just bad. Let's be honest, they're just bad models. If they get every single thing right, they put the mold together properly and the cockpits are printed properly, then it might be a gas guzzler, but they won't. It will look awful, and so it's going to go into scrap metal. And the next one is only really a step up from that in the sense that it's the 737 MAX. It's a 9 MAX. It's in the colours of Fly Dubai. The reg is A6FKA, and it's also actually World Cup related, though God knows why Fly Dubai have painted one of the 737s in Argentina champions colours, just some kind of dreadful marketing tie-in, I imagine, sort of thing that makes me sick about football. So the scheme isn't exciting me. If it was an Argentine airline, I could understand, but it's not. It's fly Dubai in the Middle East. Just stay the hell out of football, please, because I like the Premier League, and I don't want you people to ruin it any more than it's already been ruined by countless other bad people. Anyway, rant over about the football, but let's rant about the Phoenix Max. It's also rubbish, isn't it? It's just not quite as rubbish as the 737 next generation mold they have, but it's still not great. The shape is better, the cockpit's better, the shape of the nose cone in the area is better, but in detail, the tail cone isn't as nice, the wings join and the wings and the engines is not as good, and once again, the undercarriage is just poor. It's poorly placed. It doesn't really look like a Max. And I have to say that if you're looking for a Fly Dubai Max, then Gemini have been there before, even though it was an 8 Max, not a 9, with a much better release. And you should have just got that one, not this dreadful cash-in on Argentina winning the World Cup. So I haven't got a lot good to say about this. Don't like the scheme, or don't like the reason for the scheme particularly. The mold isn't going to be very good. And yeah, I'm just going to put in gas guzzler. It's going to be a gas guzzler model, you know. Yeah. Phoenix should just stop making 737s, or they should just do something with those molds because they're poor. Poor. Okay, can they redeem themselves with some 747s? It's not often that you hear me having any hope in that sentence, but these are 747-8s. So, yeah, they might be able to. The next model up is Lufthansa. It's DABYA. Hey, what a surprise, another Lufthansa. But actually, slightly surprisingly, when I look through the releases of 747-8s in the Lufty scheme, the latest Lufty scheme, there's only been one, and that's by Gemini. And that model seems to be hard to find. I saw somebody on Facebook being really pleased that they'd spent $100 on this Gemini release, which is only 2 years old. It ain't that rare, person. Whoever you were, it's like it isn't that rare. It's sort of rare. Gemini releases are not that rare. There's no Gemini release you should be spending $100 on. But getting away from that, it's rather ironic that the very next month, or the very couple of days later, that somebody announces another release of it, and it's Phoenix. And the Phoenix 747-8 is actually super nice. Looking at some of the pictures of some of the previous Phoenix 747-8s that they've made, and they've made a couple, they all look really good. Arguably, they often look better than the Gemini releases. So this mold is good. It's one of their few remaining top-class molds, and there hasn't been a Lufthansa new colours released on it yet. So this is actually a really good release. It's the first release in this set, actually, when you actually look at it clinically about the mold and the need for the release, that you actually think, hey, they've actually thought about this properly. Though I imagine they didn't, it's just accidental. So I'm going to put this one up in the Supersonic. I'm sure it's going to be good. I'm really sorry for that guy who spent $100 on the Gemini version, because you should just spend a few weeks later, waited a few weeks and got this version for a lot less money. But that's just the nature of the beast. When you spend stupid money on models, then sometimes it bites you. But it'll be good. Phoenix can carry on making 747-8s. And I'm sure they will. There is also another 747-8 this month, and this one is Atlas Air, wearing the colours, these new, I don't know how to say this, Nagel. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure even who these companies are. Frankly, I can't be bothered to look them up. Basically, it's the Atlas Air scheme with big Nagel tiles on it. They've taken these last two 747-8 freighters off the line. This one is the penultimate aircraft, N862 GT. I would be stunned if we do not see the last aircraft, N863 GT, very soon from almost everybody. But it is the first time that anyone's released this particular scheme on the 8 freighter. There's no jcwings or Gemini version of it as far as I can see. So I think that, again, this should be really nice. Phoenix have got a better 8 freighter than JC Gemini do. And unless they make a real cock-up of it, which I don't think they will with their 747-8s, then this should turn out very nicely. So again, I'm going to put this one up into supersonic. It's one of the few areas where Phoenix still have domination in a sense, or at least they've got a best-in-class mould, and they should really use those areas, because if they don't, they're probably going to go out of business. And frankly, if they don't start using their better moulds more wisely, then they probably deserve to. But don't let me make it sound like a bad thing. This is a good model, and so was the Lufthansa beforehand. And actually, the next two models in the list are also looking pretty good as well. They're both the same, with reg differences, and that is that they are both KLM 767-300s, wearing the 2003 colours with the straight line before they adopted the current scheme. And looking back through the history of releases, there's only been one other manufacturer that's made this model in this scheme, and that was actually Dragonwings, and that was 20 years ago in 2003. So the Dragon 76 is okay, but it's not as nice as the Phoenix 767, which is a good mould again, even though they don't really take into account the wing joint fairing. Lots of Phoenix moulds are kind of slab-sided where the wing joins, and this 76 is one of them. I actually probably prefer the seam JC mould slightly more, but I still like the Phoenix 767, and I do buy them when they rarely fit into my criteria. It's good to see them picking this kind of thing. It's a lot more interesting than most of the stuff that they've put out this month. There are two aircraft, PHBZI, PHBZM. They both look the same otherwise, so I'm not really sure why they're putting out two. I know why, because one of them's got the KLM Northwest logo on it, and one of them's got the SkyTeam logo. So there's a very small, minor difference between the two. I don't know if that's enough for people who collect KLMs with both of them. It probably is, to be honest. And KLM are one of Phoenix's favourite airlines. I think they should do a good job on these. I think that they'll do nicely, and yeah, I think these will be good. So I'm going to put one of these up into supersonic and one into high flyer, just because I don't think most people will be interested in getting two of them. But I think they're both going to be good models that are worthy of releases. Certainly, like I say, it's 20 years since someone else made it, and that was way back on a Dragon mold. So it's definitely a good aircraft airline combination for Phoenix to make. So after the dreadful 737s, we've actually had 4 releases now in this set, which actually look like they will be quite superb. So it slightly pains me to move on to the next model, which is yet another Qatar Airways. I mean, now the World Cup is over, surely we've got to stop getting Qatar Airways. Unnecessary models. This one is a 787-8. It's got the World Cup logo on the back end of it. A7BCM. Phoenix have made Qatar 787-8s before. The last one they made was in 2016, so it was a while ago, but they have made a pair previously. This logo is kind of like an afterthought on these ones. This FIFA World Cup logo just on the back end, so it's pretty much a standard scheme just with the logo kind of tacked on the back. The Phoenix 787-8 mold is just ancient, and just not up to spec now. I think the mold dates from like 2006 or 2007 or something. The wings are, incredibly bendy, even though the aircraft's on the ground, and the rest of the mold is ordinary. I've said this about the larger variant, the 9. The 8's no different. It's gonna be just yeah. Don't like the airline, don't like the mold. Made it before, and again, I'm going to put this in workhorse, but I could be a lot nastier and put it in a gas guzzler quite easily because of those reasons. But I'm sure it'll turn out and it'll probably look okay-ish. But I don't think you should be buying it. And maybe I'm just being too soft. Maybe I'm going soft on these reviews, and I should be gas guzzlering a lot more of these, because this one, this one just isn't exciting me really. It's pretty ordinary. And that brings us up to the last model. We're out of the Boeings, we're out of the Airbus, and we're into some virgin territory of other manufacturers, which I'm amazed. They do exist. You don't believe it when you look at a lot of the releases, but hey, other people have made aeroplanes. And this one is using Phoenix's Ilyushin IL96 mold. It's an excellent mold. This one's in the colours of Aeroflot, RA96007. Phoenix have made Aeroflot IL-96s in the scheme before, so don't go thinking that Phoenix have done something particularly unusual or shockingly interesting here. This really is a re-release, but hell, it's working for Gemini with their IL-62s, and it's working for JC with their IL-86s. So I guess you can't slander Phoenix too much for doing the same thing. The previous aircraft they made in this scheme was RA96011, and that was made 11 years ago now. So I can understand why they're re-releasing it, and I'm sure it'll be nice. But I'm struggling to get excited by it. Let's be honest. Struggling. And the main reason for that struggle is that at least with the 62s and the 86s that are being made by Gemini and JC, that at least you can turn those into quite easily into other airlines by customizing them, even though they're re-releases. And this one you can't. And there aren't that many more 96s that can be made. I know some very small minor adjustments on tiles and things, but frankly they're all really boring. So yeah, it isn't exciting me. I'm going to put this one, I don't know, I'm going to put it into high flyer. I'm going to be generous. I'm feeling generous again. I don't know why. I'm going to put it into high flyer, I think. The mold is good. It will be a good seller, and there are probably quite a lot of people who didn't get the original since it was quite a long time ago. And Phoenix, as I said earlier, do need to use their better molds, and their IL-96 certainly is a very nice mold. So I will move it into that space. Okay, so that's the roundup of this month's Phoenixes, and I have to say now I'm looking at my final ratings here that I'm feeling a little uneasy. I feel like I'm being too soft on Phoenix month on month. I feel like the quality and inspiration is just not really there, and even though we are getting some nice releases like the KLMs and that 747-8s and the I-96, there's still a lot of real mediocrity going on here, which I'm not punishing as I perhaps ought to. So in fact, looking at this, I'm going to change a couple of the scores because I'm not happy with where I position them. I'm going to move the Korean A321 down into gas guzzler. The mold, puts the right wings on it at the very least. I mean, they should probably replace the entire thing, frankly. Now, someone else needs to make this Korean A321. If you want a Korean A321, it should be coming from NG or Panda, because they're the only people with decent Neo molds for the type. I'm also going to move the Qatar 787 down into gas guzzler as well. The mold is obsolete, and I really, like I've said before, Qatar is not an exciting airline, and we don't need it. It's an unnecessary release, and it really would surprise me if NG go and release it on their new 787-8 mold, which is going to be much better anyway. So just don't need it. I'm going to put that down in gas guzzler as well. And I think that more clearly fits where these should be sitting. I could potentially move some of the high flies down in the workhorse, though maybe that would be a little unfair. So I'm going to leave those where they are, I think. But yeah, overall, I've heard some people being quite excited about this month's releases, but I'm not really seeing it. The 747-8s, yeah, I could see a little bit of excitement, though. But frankly, Lufthansa in these new cars, nothing to get excited about, frankly, on the 747. It's a boring livery anyway. And the Aeroflot is a re-release. So you've got to say, if you had to pick a release out of these that was the best, it would probably be those Dutch 767s, to be honest. They are what I'd like to see. Looking back through, I presume they do this. You look back through what's been made, you look at your molds, you go, oh, we haven't made that, or nobody's made that for a long time, and our mold's not bad, so we should be making that. I'd like to think that's how this happened, though I bet it isn't. And the rest of the release set here, the A320s, the A350s, even the A330 Neo, they're just the molds are not there. They're okay, but they won't be as good as anybody else's version of it. The 737s just go, well, they're just going to be mediocre to begin with. So that is Phoenix in a nutshell. So maybe I'm being harsh. I don't think I am. I think actually I've been probably a bit too soft to them in recent months. Hopefully, I was going to say things have changed. They're not going to change. Phoenix are not going to change. I'm just lying to myself there. And I was disappointed, incidentally, to see the mess they made of that Greenland Air A330-800. The photos I've seen, the colours are way too dark. They don't match even the previous Phoenix releases. I don't know why that is, because I do know that Phoenix asked for help with the colours on that aircraft, and the colours were correct. So I don't know how they balls that up so badly. That's disappointing and sloppy. So, yeah, they're not my favourite company by a long shot. For the reasons I've talked about, the moulds aren't so great, the printing detail isn't as good, competition tends to be better, and the choices are ordinary. You know, but they're okay, here and there. So, that's it for this month for my look at the Phoenix January releases. What do you guys think? Which models are you picking up out of this? I know Phoenix still have quite a strong following amongst quite a few of you, but you really should be, I think, shopping around a little bit more widely where there's competition, because there is some good competition for a lot of these releases. But that's it from me this month. I'll see you next month. Ta-ra.